Good evening, Cheeseheads, and welcome to our Monday night Spurs review show, dissecting the mess that was Saturday's 6-1 drubbing at the hands of top four rivals Newcastle, a result that effectively ends our top four ambitions for this season and feels a little bit like the consequence of 4 years of mismanagement where the opportunities presented to us with the new stadium, the Champions League final, have not been built upon. In fact, we've squandered them. Now the club, more than ever, needs to act. And tonight, it has acted. Joining me tonight to discuss the game, Mason Ball, the match, and everything in between, we have a bumper panel of guests. Firstly, we have our regular Monday night panel member, glutton for punishment, and someone who, in my view, the club do not deserve, in Becky. Becky, how are you feeling after your weekend?
Surprisingly good, actually. I had a great time. I always do. More recently, I always do until kickoff. But yeah, I didn't travel as far as some people. For me, it was 3.5 hours. Some people had like an 8-hour round trip. But yeah, we'll get into it. But I thought it was going to be bad. I didn't think it was going to be quite that bad, to be honest.
Well, I look forward to hearing all about it as we get into the show. Secondly, we have our voice from down under, social media icon and TalkSport favourite, Davo. Davo, how are you? How's life down under?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on today. No, I'm good, thanks. I've had a week off work, going back to work tomorrow. And as I said before the show, all respect to Becky and all respect to all those who travelled to see the game. It's unbelievable support, of which they don't deserve. For me, my only commitment was watching it till 1 o'clock in the morning. And after a while, I just started laughing. But we'll get into it. And it's nice to be on.
Yeah, I look forward to discussing it. Lots to get into. Thirdly, we've got my regular Wednesday night sidekick, fresh from a weekend discovering his deep spiritual self with some muffins and cookies in Amsterdam. We have Gibbo. Gibbo, how was your weekend cruising?
Great weekend. Even Spurs couldn't ruin what a good weekend it was. But yeah, difficult times watching that in a bar full of Newcastle fans and other fans who were just cheering every goal, laughing at us. So yeah, plenty to get into, isn't there? And mate, that's a great intro. How long did it take you to write that?
About 2 seconds. I have got a question on the back of that intro, though. Is it easier watching Spurs high?
That was on Saturday, mate. I'd had a couple to drink, and I'm not a massive drinker. I don't drink all the time, but I was like watching it, and nah, mate, it's not easier. It's painful, no matter, mate. No matter what state of mind you're in.
You drink in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
He definitely partaken in Amsterdam, I'm sure. He went very quiet on that day he was in Amsterdam.
Yeah. It was raining.
So he went into a cafe. Interesting. Yeah. And we'll get into that anyway. It's more fun than the Spurs. And finally, we have our resident Stato and student, James. James, how's your week been? Got your assignment done?
I didn't have one this week. No, it's been pretty solid. Just been down the pub. Played 5 games of pool. Sadly, lost the 5 frame a game, 3-2. Close competitive fixture between me and I run a society at Portsmouth. Lost to the treasurer. I just put the economic student in charge. I feel good. Do you know what? I've had 4 pints on a JD and Coke. I feel fantastic. Spurs were fucking shocking, but I'm a happy clapper. Promise I won't swear too much tonight, everybody. Completely promise. Hand on heart. Only a little bit of swearing.
Jose, you've already wrecked it.
Yeah. Only took 4 minutes 28, but that's fine this week. I think, to be fair, it's a difficult week. I think all of us getting up to do this show, it's hard. It's not easy being a Spurs fan. It's not easy putting these pods together. But let's start, Becky, with you, because you were the one that took the long journey up north. How was it? Talk us through your matchday experience. What was the mood in the away end like before game and with the lineup and everything else?
Was that question for me? Because it all went off.
Sorry,
then.
Becky.
Okay,
yeah, question for you, Becky.
Yeah.
So how was it for you? What was the sort of mood in the away end and the initial reaction to the change in formation?
Okay, so I know people like a little bit of a backstory. So I got up at 6 o'clock, left here at 7, drove to Middlesbrough because that's where Joe is, and then got to Middlesbrough about 10:30, and then we got the train from Middlesbrough to Newcastle, which on a Sunday was surprisingly busy with people going to the Metro Centre and whatnot. Got there about 12, went to the pub across the road from the station, met loads of people, had a lovely and sunny, lots of pictures, saying hello to people. And then the lineup came out, and my Jackie sat at home, texted me going, "Oh my God, we're playing 4-4-2. We might be having like a really attacking game, and this is going really well." And I'm like, this is from a 10-year-old. So I was like reading it, going, "Oh my God!" And then we're like looking closely, going, "Sarr's playing," and yeah, just really positive, hopeful. Like I said, but top of the show, I had very low expectations of the game. I have to be honest. Newcastle, I know they'd had a blip, but they got all the things that we had last year, momentum and, fans behind them and a kind of good feeling about the crowd and a good feeling about the team, good feeling about the manager. But, like I said, I didn't expect it to be quite as insane as it was. So we wandered up to the stadium about 20-2. Everyone was saying about how it's such a steep climb, and I was getting pictures of people sending me pictures of, like, John sent me one of somebody like climbing up a mountain. I've been having loads of pictures. But I have to be honest, I've walked to Upper East, I think it is, in our stadium. If you don't take the lift at Upper East, there's quite a lot of steps behind the concourse there. So to me, it just felt the same as that. And then we got in. By then they were waving all the flags, and the sound system was absolutely booming. I know that always comes across really well, like on the TV, but wowzers, to be fair, they put our sort of attempt at sort of flags and music and things. We've got, it's another level. So we got there, it was absolutely booming, flags waving, it's all about to start. I took a selfie with like the stadium behind me to say, "Oh, here I am," and I sent it to Jack. And then what felt like about 40 seconds later, I was stood in my place, and then all just the carnage kind of ensued. But yeah, going back to your original question, I thought, to make the changes that he made, to bring Sarr in, and, we conceded playing 4-4-2, didn't we, at Bournemouth? So, for him to kind of stick with it, I was a little, it was a positive thing. Let's say I wasn't hopeful, but it was a positive thing.
You're mute. You're on mute, Craig.
Oh, it's like I'm at work again. So you're mute. Becky, that is an interesting point about it was a positive thing. Was that the general mood amongst those in the away end?
Yeah, that the Bournemouth game was strange, wasn't it? We had the Sanchez incident. We had them kind of reverting back to 4-4-2 at the end. We felt like we had 5 up front towards the end with Danjuma and Richarlison and So it felt like he'd kind of tried to have a look at the team and have a think about how we were going to play Newcastle and how we were not going to get overrun in midfield. And it seemed like there was some sort of thought gone into everything. I know I keep saying it seemed like, because as soon as the game kicked off, it just went wrong.
I mean, I agree with you there, Becky. When the teams were announced, and I'll open up to the others if that's okay, and I'll come back to you, Becky, because I've got loads more questions about what it was like up north. But when the initial team selection was, but I didn't see much negativity about the fact that he'd gone to a back four. In fact, it was encouragement to the fact he was trying to do something different. Yes, there was a comments about, have we got the best fullbacks in Perisic and in
they're not fullbacks, are they?
Porro. Well, they're not fullbacks and wing-backs, no. So I guess, Dave, I go to you. What was your initial reaction to that lineup?
My initial reaction to that lineup was a couple of things. Is that I felt that you can't have. You can't have Perisic and Porro as fullbacks, and to my mind, and it's not hindsight. I was thinking this at the time. We're going up to a crucial game. I know fourth place had already been gone by then, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, you're going to Newcastle away, right? It's going to be a tough game, and you're going to play a new system with two fullbacks who are not fullbacks. I mean, you can even argue that Perisic is not much of a Porro and Perisic. Yeah, they're wingers or the wing backs, and they're good at going forward, right? I felt for Sarr if I think about it, the 3 starts he's had is Milan away, the Gunners at home, and this, right? And I think based on his performance when he came on against Palace and Milan away, I think he's got real potential there, and I hope whomever comes in next realises that. And then the other thing as well is that I think Longley and Davis were on the bench, clearly not fit to start or really play. And he didn't pick Sanchez because of what happened last weekend. But we'll talk about Sanchez a little bit later on because my respect for him has really gone up, actually. But I understand. Look, we've all been calling out for having a third in midfield all year. I would have gone with a 3-5-2 with the 3 in the middle, and I'd have dropped Kulusevski. That's what I would have done.
Gibbo, I think similar views from you,
mate. I just thought it was if he's gone to 4 at the back when we don't have the players to play a 4 at the back at this present time. Has he been thinking, people are calling for a change, so I'm going to try something different? Because if he has, that's just extremely weak management. But like the 2 fullbacks, not fullbacks, playing up there against a bit of pace, a high line with Dier in it, recipe for disaster, which it was. So it was good that he put the, gives Sarr a game, mate. But it was just a poor team selection, really. It was like 2 at the back, wasn't it? And then your 2 fullbacks pushing up. So I don't even know what the formation was, but I thought we can. Did I put in the correct group, Craig? I can't really remember, but did I say they'd score within 5-10 minutes? I didn't mean 3. I think I put in the group that they'd score within the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah,
and they did. We're not set up to cope with that kind of pressure. We're not good enough at the minute to cope with that kind of pressure, and that's what they did. And the team selection was pretty woeful, really, wasn't it? When you look at playing we've played wing backs when we didn't have any wing backs. Now we're playing full backs when I don't know if we'll stay there, but we're playing full backs. We've got no full backs on the pitch. It's just ridiculous. The decisions that are being made. Obviously, we'll get onto it, but it's all changed now. Stellini and then we got to hope it changes. But very extremely poor management from Stellini, as it was the week before against Bournemouth. But I didn't expect a lot either. Bar was very low. I thought we'd get beat. I thought we'd get beat quite comfortably. Not as comfortable as it was.
James, would you have gone for that lineup? What would your lineup have been if you were Stellini?
Well, right. Sorry. First of all, hi Sam. My mate Sam's watching. He doesn't know anything about football. He's a rugby lad, but I dragged him to watch a Spurs game once, so and a Portsmouth game actually. So, what's up, mate? Anywho, what my lineup have been. Thing is, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're Stellini, aren't you, in a way? Because everyone was hating on Sanchez because he put in a shocking performance recently. Hello, mate. Anywho, he put in a shocking performance, and he's the only other real centre back we have. Tanganga's there, but whatever, right? So, the 3-4-3 hasn't been working recently, so you want to change it up. That's good. That's good management in a way. That's pragmatic. Issue is we haven't got any fullbacks. So I like 4-3-3. That's my default formation, right? In this case, I'd have probably gone 3-5-2. Son and Kane, same midfield, just, you whack Sanchez. And the issue is, had he started that, there'd have been criticism of Sanchez. And if Sanchez is going to have a good game. I thought in the end, when he came on from the little bits I saw, I turned it off after the third goal went in and then put it on periodically. I thought he was okay. But I can see why he didn't want to put him under that pressure again. So I can kind of understand why he did it. I appreciate that he did something different. But, with the injuries we have and the squad we have, you kind of bugger, don't you? Simple as.
He could have shown some faith if he'd have started Sanchez, though. Like somebody's asked me I would have gone, we're not set up, we've not got the players to play 4 at the back. So I would have gone, even though we're all asking for change, stayed with the 3 at the back. You're playing a team who they had a bad game last week, but they're pretty good at home. They don't lose many games. They were going to go after us. So you sort of, in a way, you've got to be pretty safe, saying, look, I've got 2 wing backs, but I've got 3 centre backs. You can work on that during the week, which is like what you should be doing. Whether he picked Tanganga or Sanchez to start, you had Longley and Davis on the bench if needed. Maybe tinkered around with it a little bit. Maybe put Dier out on the left or whatever. It's a nightmare when you play 3 because we haven't got left-sided. But just put Sanchez on that. But you should have played 3 at the back. And then obviously you've got the 3 in midfield. They'd have been pretty solid because none of them are really sort of like expressive going forward, are they? That they're all sort of much of a muchness. Then you've got your wing back. So yeah, just to answer that comment, I'd have gone 3-5-2, used the wing backs as they should have been, and obviously the 3 at the back. And maybe, well, I'm trying to say about keeping it a bit tight, but as we'll come on to it, the first goal doesn't matter what your formation is, does it? When you sort of like let people run through you like that, so. I think we'll talk about it on here, mate. But the formations are relevant when players play like that anyway.
Mm-hmm. Going into the game, Becky, going back to you in the away end, what was it? What was the mood in that first? When did it turn really bad? Was the 1-0 down a sort of expected thing? What was the reaction in the crowd? How did it evolve as the next 21 minutes clocked by?
I just sort of said, we all sort of said to other people, it was like some sort of surreal dream or nightmare. Just the speed and the pace that they sort of, and the confidence that they just kind of sliced through us. I have watched the goals back this afternoon, but there's still a bit of a blur, not because I was drinking or anything. It just all seemed to happen so fast. I just remember in the replays how easily, whether it be Dier or Romero, just were not really there. And then Lloris, whether Lloris was at fault for the first one, he makes the save, doesn't he? And he parries it sort of sideways. And then the second one, they just seemed can be clean through and shot. And it was all of a sudden, everyone sort of looking, it was at 3-0, quite a vast majority. I'd say someone asked me this question today on Twitter. I reckon about a third probably left after that third goal, and then everyone else just decided that they'd stay. But it was even things like, it feels like for the first sort of 25, 30 minutes, every single time they attacked, they scored. There was one chance I remember where someone hit it over the bar, or, I think Lloris caught it and there was ironic cheers. We were going back to when they tried to play it out from the back and we were booing, and then they kicked it long instead. And it was, I think, in answer to your question, the first sort of 3 goals, it was just sort of, I remember looking kind of sideways at sort of Liz and going, what? And my friend Gemma left at like the second goal. She'd had enough. She went. But I sort of looked across and was like, wowzers, what the hell is going on? And what are we going to do to stop this? And weirdly, when it gets to 5-0, that's when he brings Sanchez on and hoiks Sarr off. So I agree with Dave. Dave's Sarr's played some really, really great games, some really tough, high impact games that had a lot riding on them, and then you feel quite sorry for him that he's the one that gets hoiked off. It was just this sort of like I said before, we thought it would happen, we didn't think it would be that bad, we didn't think it would be that quick either. We didn't have anything at all going forward. There was nothing really to build on. So people saying about building on anything, there was nothing to build on. It was just relentless at the end that we were at. You did feel that every single time they went forward, they were going to score, and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, they blew us away, didn't they, Dave?
Yeah, they did, and it was quite surreal, really. And in preparation for coming on to the show tonight, I actually went back and watched the goals because they all just seem to blur one after another, and. And it's like I watched it with my youngest. He's more into rugby than he is into football, and he was just going, "What is going on?" It's my oldest. He's really passionate about it. Also called Jack, great name. He's just come back from cadet camp and he went to bed early. And when we told him the following morning, he couldn't believe it. But it was just an onslaught, and it was like we did nothing about it. And even when in situations like that, when you get the ball when we rarely get the ball at the other end of the pitch, you hold on to the ball and play out a bit of time, take it to the corner, take the pressure off the defence. That's where you show leadership in those situations. And I'm going to call out some sacred cows. I think Kulusevski has been extremely poor this season. And I appreciate there's a lot of commentary around the fact he's not been the same since he's been injured and this, that, and the other. You've got to bear in mind he's had the whole World Cup off. He didn't go. And I think he's been poor this season, apart from Southampton. And there's someone like him with his attributes and his ability to be on the ball is somewhere where you take the pressure out of the game. And as I said with Sarr, I just think that, I hope this is a situation doesn't kind of damage him, because as I said, I think he's got potential.
Yeah. Gibbo, what's your view on the goals and the manner in which they were conceded?
So I sat and watched the whole first 20 minutes in the car while Zach was training earlier. And it was like I said, the first goal, mate. They just ran. Joe Linton's just ran into the box, managed to get himself in a position, just weak all round, weak defending. And obviously we have a bit of a joke that I like Hojbjerg, but we'll come on to that a bit later. Like another sacred cow, Dave. You're right, but it was awful. It was just awful play. So and then the Lloris, could he have done better there? It's just all round for me. It's just like weak defending, half-hearted attempts to stick a leg out. And the second one was actually Joe Linton's goal, wasn't it? The second goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had the third one, which was a shot which Lloris didn't even move. But the one for me that I found really hard was the one where there's one where they pinged it and it just dropped over Porro in Romero. That was Joe Linton's, wasn't it? The second one, they just pinged it long and it just went over him. I mean, it was just shoddy, really shoddy schoolboy defending. And
there was one time I just so I remember it. There was one time I remember, I think it was 4-0. It might have been 3-0. And we had the ball near the halfway line. I think it was Kulusevski who lost the ball. It wasn't Son. And they just went from there on, ran through and scored. So even when we had passages of play, we didn't know what to do with it. They were completely shell-shocked. So
that one, Beck, was when Willock has apparently got assist of the season. Now, we were sloppy. Second to the ball. Now, that is a good pass with the outside of his foot. Now, I've played football, not at a very good standard. I wasn't a very good player, but I played with some good players. Now, that guy, if you're a decent player, you should be able to ping a ball with the outside of your foot. So I've seen players do that, and I was rubbish, but I was quick. So that goal, if you're playing against a crap team, which is what Newcastle were, that he just had the time to be able to bend that ball with the outside of his foot. A foot race between Isaac and Dier is only ever going to be won by one person. It's just like the basics. Spurs do the basics extremely poorly. And at the minute, they're not even if they don't do the basics, they've not got the energy or the doesn't seem like the attitude or the application to even be able to fight to win the balls. And and just watching that, if you watch that first 20 minutes again, Spurs are forever passing it backwards and sideways. And even when Newcastle do it, there's at least a little bit of zip on the ball if they have to put a sideways pass in or a pass backwards. But they are just so more comfortable on the ball. They knock it round with so much more intent. And like Gomes in midfield gets on and he turns. And even when he's not looking, he can see a pass. And we've got none of that. It was...
What was interesting as well, as I can remember in the second half, I remember Romero, obviously by then Forster was on. He passed it to Romero. Romero, I think, passed the Dier. And even then it was like to Porro and then back to Hojbjerg. Yeah. And everyone was like, I think it was 5-1 then at the time. And there's I remember people mentioning it at the AC Milan home game when we were 1-0 down on aggregate. Everyone was just standing still. There's just no sort of pace to anything. It's just we'll stand and we'll do that and we'll do this and we'll do that. And even at 5-1 down, there was no sort of urgency at all. Yeah.
One point in that first 20 minutes, we knocked the move and somebody ran forward, which was Skipp. And I think he carved out a chance. He pulled it back and Kane had a shot wide. That was the only time we got on the ball, looked to pass forward, looked to follow a pass, looked to move, and we got a chance from it. We just don't do it enough. We just look awkward trying to pass. And like Becky said, when it goes back, then Lloris kicks it and it's out of touch. But I think we'll come on to it like I said about Hojbjerg. We're talking about Lloris's kicking. And then we can talk about Stellini and Levy talking to the player committee earlier and the players that are in that players committee. And I think there's a little part of the
I saw that on WhatsApp. Right, Joe put that on WhatsApp, and I was like, "This is a wind-up." She's just plucked these names out of the sky, and then I saw the thing on Sky Sports News where he named those players, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah. I think there's.
I just have this image of the player committee all sipping tea and having rich tea biscuits or digestives. Do you know what I mean?
I would love to know what was generally said in that meeting, but anyway, we'll get into that later.
Not a lot.
We'll get into that. I think it's, I've got written down, James, when I was preparing for this earlier, and it's something I heard commented a few times, but is that possibly the worst 21 minutes of opening Premier League football match ever by Spurs? And we set a new record there. I don't remember seeing in my lifetime supporting Spurs a performance quite as bad as that. And I will extend that to Davo, just because, Davo, you're the veteran in the room.
Oh.
But James, for you, Paul, James?
I will refrain from vulgar terminology here, even though I would very much like to use it. From what I've seen, honestly, I switched off after about 10 minutes, because I'll give you a little story. I woke up about 1:30. I'll whack it on. I'm in bed still. I'm happy. I'm thinking, right, going to watch Spurs, good competitive game of footy, in bed, have a coffee, have a little vape. I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling fantastic even. Game comes on. They score very early on. I'm like, all right, now, lads, it's fine. It's still 0-0, right? We got this. Early little blip. We got the slip up out the way, right? It's all good. We got this. Then they scored the second. And I'm like, right, lads, come on. Then they got the third. And I'm just like, I have had enough of this. I am not going to ruin my mental health, because if I continue watching, I am going to down ethanol and bleach. Anywho, that is the worst Spurs performance I think I've seen ever honestly in my life. Like, I've seen Spurs teams fail to be pretty horrifically poor teams. I've seen us lose 7-2 to Bayern, although 4 of their goals came in the last 15 minutes when we were throwing everything at them. So whatever, who cares? What makes it even worse is my ex is a bloody Newcastle fan. So it's just atrocious. There has to be accountability for that. Yeah,
I think it was the speed at which they scored as well. I think people genuinely in the ground were like, "This is going to be 7 or 8," and I then referred to the Liverpool Man United game. But like you said then about Bayern, those sort of games. Weirdly, we beat Newcastle in the reverse fixture at home last year. I remember they scored first, that sort of dodgy, sort of scuffed free kick, and then we went on to win.
Yeah,
it was just the speed with which they scored. You really were like, wowzers! If Stellini doesn't do something, or the players don't pull the finger out, this is going to be double figures. That's kind of what the sense was. And weirdly, talking to a lot of supporters in the pubs before the game, Newcastle fans were really worried that we were going to kind of sneak a 1-0, or we were going to equalise near the end or something. They really thought that we were going to turn up, which is quite weird hearing them sort of say that, because we knew how poor we were and how unlikely that really was.
Dave, I'm always in.
Sorry, mate.
David, I'm always in. No, sorry, no, it's fine. We will come back to that point, though, Gibbo. But David, I'm always impressed with your knowledge of Spurs over history, and you've got a real good understanding. I mean, my earliest memories go back into the early 90s for me, I guess, and then it was bad then. But in your time, do you ever remember seeing a Spurs team capitulate like that?
I was just writing down just very quickly a hall of shame, and so if you can just indulge me for one moment. So the very, very first North London derby I went to, I was 7 years old, and we lost 5-0 at home to the Gooners. And we basically, John Lacey, a man so thin he has to run around in the showers to get wet, did this suicidal back pass, and they were 1-0 up inside a minute. And we lost 5-0. And that's the first riot I ever ran away from at the age of 7. Not very good parenting by my late father. And then just some other capitulations and shockers. Remember United when we were 2-0 up at half time, we lost 5-2. Do you remember that?
3-0.
5-3. Yeah, 3-0.
I was there, yeah.
Yeah, I went to the toilet at half time thinking what I was going to say to the managing director of my company, who's a big United fan, even thinking about texting him. Didn't do that.
Dave, they were all singing, weren't they? Down in the concourse. Singing and cheering. Yeah,
that's right. And then there was the Newcastle. We lost Newcastle 7-1 under Jerry Francis, and I think we got spanked in the FA Cup under George Graham. There was the Bolton 6-1 in the League Cup.
Sheffield United.
The last one is so Christian Gross's first home game as the manager, comes out to applause. It's 1-1 at half time, and we lost 6-1. And I think Dennis Wise was dancing in front of the Spurs fans at the end. And I've been going to football since 7 or 8 with my brother. The family lived across the road, growing up with them, and now been out the grandkids stage and things like that who are going. And we got in the car and no one said anything the whole way home. It was like someone had metaphorically died, right? That's how bad it was. But let me remind you all, ladies and gentlemen, and happy birthday to Kerry as well. These are the lows. Take you back to Amsterdam, take you back to other times, Ricky Villa. There are the highs, and we will come back to that one day, I promise.
Yeah, well said. Well said. That was a great reflection back there. Gibbo,
you sure?
No, it's really it was good. And I funny enough, I forgot about Christian Gross's first game. I was there as well. I forgot about that, how bad that was. I always
think you do though, don't you? You have to block them out. I know, like some games they are truly memorable, but some games you do just have to sort of. That's it. You just forget. You try to forget to help. Pain.
We know, the funny thing is, Becky, and obviously I can't speak for you, but as the fact that you went yesterday, and I see you go with the same bunch of people that you've been going to, it looks like for years, and that's where your bond comes in, and that's the bond that I have, my family, my brother, and as I said, with the family who live across the road, and that's the kind of bond. These are the things of memory. I know it sounds weird, but this is the stuff of memories.
Yeah. I would be interested then, Gibbo. Obviously, you was watching in a pub. I know you were surrounded by Villa fans and other groups. I'm sure will tell us about that. But did you watch the whole game, or did you decide enough's enough and
I watched us go 5 down. Yeah. Then we moved to another place, so I went back in there for the second half, which I actually thought we did okay, but Newcastle had sort of given up by then. We scored a goal, didn't we? So that was just a pretty drab half. But I watched the madness and then the second half. But yeah, it was just abject, wasn't it? It was hard. And like Dave said, though, when you are at those games, I think the worst game I ever went to, we didn't get smashed that many, but we lost 3-0 to Notts County in the League Cup.
Aussie's last game.
Away. Yeah. And that was a really, really dreadful performance. But over the years, I think I've seen worse performances than that from Spurs. Not many, but we have had some real stinkers over the years. And we were always, once or twice a year, we get a good drubbing off someone in the 90s, didn't we? We always used to get a good drubbing once or twice. Like I said, Sheffield United, Newcastle. We've had a few throw-pins up at Newcastle, Liverpool.
Didn't they do one when they'd been relegated? People were reminding me of this yesterday. When they got relegated and then they beat us like 5-0 or something away.
It was Poch's
last game
of the season.
Of the season, of that season.
Sorry, not Poch's last. So sorry. Poch's last game was Sheffield United. I was at that, and that was poor. And Man United, Nuno's last game, that was poor. So
I think what separates out yesterday, I think. And we'll look forward in a minute. Don't worry, guys. We're not going to dwell on this. But I think what separated out for me yesterday, what made it so bad, was the to concede that amount of goals in that short space of time. That's the difference. I think we've had drummings where we've conceded 5 or 6 goals. And we've put 6 past Leicester this year. Don't forget. It's been that sort of strange season. But even in that game when we put 6 past Leicester, you never got the sense that they just capitulated in the way that we did for that first 21 minutes.
It was 2-2, wasn't it, at half time? And they scored first.
I
think what yesterday showed, Craig, was just the lack of any real idea of what to do. I think that was the most damning thing of that first 20 minutes, the lack of how to respond. the lack of how to start the game, the lack of just like the looks on the faces of the players when the goals went in. And like, even like you got some like Perisic, I know he's playing out of position, but really experienced player. And I thought, and like, obviously action has been taken, and maybe that's what we've got it. That, well, that is all you can take from that game, that action has actually been taken, because that sort of, not that performance, not that scoreline, but these performances have been bad for weeks, haven't they? And yesterday was just the culmination of poor performance, poor coaching, just lack of any direction or leadership or anything. And it was just literally was the perfect storm in the first.
The only leadership we saw, I seem to remember, I don't know whether it's 4-0 or 5-0, is Kane gets them all into like a huddle and just gets them in and starts talking to them, and there's kind of like pointing. And because I noticed a few times, this is why I know people have put in the chat the chat about the committee. We'll come to the committee after. But Dier and Hojbjerg were arguing quite a lot. Porro and Romero were arguing quite a lot. I don't know.
That, Becky, that is a sign of when performances like that Spurs yesterday shows that they're a performance from a team where there's a club in real. And it took
Kane to kind of bring everyone into the middle, and they were in the middle, and like, the game had gone by then. But he was sort of bringing them in, and he obviously was sort of giving them pointers.
Yeah.
Then
are we talking about? Sorry, we can talk. We're getting to half time. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, exactly where I'm going. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Dave. Yeah, no, we've got to half time, and then players went in. Players came out.
We did boo. I will point out that I think you can boo your team 5-0 down at half time. That's allowed.
Going in or going out. Sorry, or both.
Going in, I think, because remember, you've got the government alert at 3:00. So going in, definitely we booed them, and then we're all they announced it on the tannoy. The government thing is at 3:00, sitting there with their phones. And I think I put on Facebook earlier in the day, I just wanted to see what would happen when you're in a stadium with 50,000 people. What's going to happen? And of course, mine was the phone that didn't work and didn't do it, and nothing happened. And it was like,
sorry, apologies, Becky. Can I do a PSA? If you don't want those announcements, you can turn it off in phone settings, actually.
I know that. I just wanted to know what happened with 50,000 others going off at the same time. But it didn't work.
I mean, that's the only thing I got excited about yesterday, James, to be honest.
That's what I mean.
And this,
this thing that went off at 3:00, did you get a free U2 album as well on your phone?
I'm sorry, Dave. The government I have issues with, but they're not that cruel. They wouldn't do that to us.
So booed in at halftime, Becky. Enic out chance, Levy out chance.
Yes, and there was a bit of banter in sort of like with the sort of, I think there's at one point we sang where and we know we are, and we did that, and that was quite funny. And then I remember in the second half we were singing one Kane scored. We did sing, kind of, and I know a few people have said that they could hear us singing then. Bearing in mind a third had gone by then. We were singing No Noise from the Saudi Boys. And of course they then sing back 6-1 to the Saudi Boys. But yeah, certainly when Kane scored, it kind of quietened the crowd a bit, which is, I was saying to Liz next to me, we don't sing, no supporters in the whole country sing non-stop. Unless there's a drum or something, we just don't. So, and that was the same at St. James's Park. They got going when the goals were going in and the chances were going in, and then when that kind of all sort of calmed down a bit, it did quieten down things. But yeah, like I said, it was just like we all said, we knew it was over. We're here for the rest of it, and we'll just watch what's going on. Really, I like being at the game where you can see like Mason and Stellini were arguing again fairly early on. But yeah.
Mason and Stellini. Sorry, Mason and Stellini. So.
Yeah. What did I say? Did I say right?
No, I was just checking I heard you right. Yeah, I was just checking I heard you right. Sorry.
So you talk about what you know of at halftime, because I don't know if it's different to what I know.
So I'll talk about how it came about to me. So the obviously come out at halftime, Forster took over in goal, and then the official line from Sky Sports was that there was a muscle injury to Lloris, and then in Twitter, as always these things start, it was rumoured that there was a massive bust-up at half-time between players and staff, and Lloris refused to come back out for the second half because he didn't want anything to do with it, and that's where the substitution was made. Subsequently, the club appeared to go to great lengths to dismiss this, by bringing him out in front of the cameras after the game to front up in Sky Sports. And
without a black eye.
Yeah,
was he limping heavily behind the microphone?
Yeah. And secondly, which I thought was very interesting, was he the club put out a release to make a point that Stellini had confirmed that he had an injury and in fact was not as a consequence of an argument, which you never normally see for any player that goes off substitutes with an injury. So clearly the club have tried to respond to the rumour mill. So I guess my first question is, panel, what do we believe to be the truth? Was there a bust-up or was there not a bust-up?
So if I can just remind you all of, if you remember when Tim Sherwood, Gilet in chief, was the caretaker, and he decided to play, let me get this right, the Icelandic, whose name we're not allowed to mention, and I think Bentaleb in the middle of midfield, Liverpool away. You remember when Sturridge, Sanchez, Sterling in their pomp, and I think we're 3 down at half time. And Vertonghen mysteriously didn't appear for the second half, nor for the rest of the season. And the general vibe was he'd had enough of Mr. Sherwood. I kind of got the feeling like that yesterday. I think the thing about Hugo, which I've been kind of disappointed with over the last 4 to 6 weeks, is even when he's been injured, is the lack of his kind of leadership and ability of coming out into the media and having a discussion with the fans or being interviewed and things like that. And I will bang on about this until whenever. Leadership, you show great leadership when you basically, sorry, it's early in the morning, John, you're right. You show great leadership when times aren't going well. And I apply that to Mr. Levy, and I apply that to Hugo as well. I've actually been really disappointed with it. It's not just about his form this season. I've been really disappointed with his lack of leadership. And that's been disappointing for me. To show leadership, and I'll stop ranting. My final thing to say is that I am not a fan of Davinson Sanchez. I think 42 million quid spent on him was a complete waste of money. There's been a lot of narrative in Twitter in the last couple of weeks that Mourinho and Conte ruined him. Well, Poch didn't pick him in a Champions League final. He had a good first season. And after that, I don't think he's good enough. His positioning's not good enough. But I take my hat off to him yesterday because I thought he did all right when he came on in the second half. He actually got himself on the ball and went forward, which is not his attributes or his strengths. So I've got a lot of respect for him for that. The booing debate is, you talked about it last week. And I also think that one of the reasons that we played that formation yesterday is because Stellini was scared about playing Sanchez after what happened to him. But really what Stellini should realise is that the away fans are just to the left of Kilimanjaro and he could have played him anyway. So Sanchez showed leadership. Lloris, I've been very disappointed with him.
Yeah.
Gibbo, what did you make in terms? What players come out with credit yesterday for you, if any?
Kane, the shining light, isn't he? He got on the ball and made things happen. I think Hojbjerg's getting worse as the weeks go on. I don't know really, mate. I mean, Kulusevski was non-existent. I was glad that Lloris come on. I think whether we'll come on to it with this team committee or whatever rubbish or nonsense it is, there's a massive problem at Spurs. Lloris, Forster was doing okay in goal. We were playing better out the back when we had Forster in goal. And the minute Lloris is fit, he comes back in. Eric Dier's part of this committee, apparently. Poor, not good enough. But he's got a voice, and they're on about offering him a new contract. Kane, obviously, is the main one. But, Hojbjerg's in it. He's been poor. They're just like players who they're pretty much... All 5 of those are guaranteed their, or is it 4 or 5? But whatever it is, they're guaranteed their place in the team. And that is a big, big issue, even when their form's poor. And that will cause friction. It's just like, Kane, come out of it. That's it, mate, really, isn't it? I mean, can you think of anyone?
No, no. I mean, I am interested, James, to get your view on. I mean, the second half was, for all intents and purposes, a non-event. Unless Becky, you disagree with that. I don't think we substantially improved in the second half. I just felt that Newcastle done their job. They did what they needed to do. It was never going to be anything more than that. But so I think going towards the end of the game, what did you make, James, of players swapping shirts? I believe Richarlison was guilty of swapping shirts. Anyone else?
I think Perisic as well, wasn't it?
Perisic, yeah. I mean, what did you make
But
of that?
didn't Perisic swap his with Jesus? No, he swapped one with an Arsenal player, didn't he, at the Arsenal game? I seem to remember somebody.
Well, I think he's only here for the season, so he wants to get as many souvenirs.
Yeah, I was going to
as
say, he looks really old on that football pitch. Maybe just wanted be a bit warmer.
But his highlights are the definition of a middle-aged man's midlife crisis. He says missed. The person's apparently got a wig on.
Look, I mean, I'm going to comment on the to divert from the script. I'm going to divert and comment on the halftime thing first. Hugo isn't a good leader, and the thing about the whole player committee, right? I'm going to tell a little story. So my mother, she got nominated for Inspirational Woman of the Year at her work, and do you know who won that? My mum came second. The person who won it was the person who organised the awards contest. That reads a little bit like Hugo being on the players committee and getting bloody picked, doesn't it? Seems a little bit like
your mum work for FIFA?
Close. No. She might as well though. Anywho, I'm sorry, but why is there a players committee in the first place? And I was saying this to my mate Sam, who I think is watching at the pub, right? Yeah, he said I was telling him this at the pub. What we need is, look, Jose was passive aggressive. Conte was bipolar. Poch was their mate. What we need someone who's going to come in, and I'm going to use my swearing allowance here a little bit, and turn around and say, no, that's not fucking okay. That's what you need. I'm sorry, but we can't have this pampered bollocks. That's the end of the day. Anyway, in terms of trading shirts, I think a lot of the players at the club treat it like a job, which, to be fair, if I played for a club that wasn't Spurs, I would as well. They paid a lot of money. They're trading it, they don't love the club. They have no love for Tottenham, do they?
It is their job, though, James.
Yeah, it's their job. Do you love your job? The job I do, I don't love. I show up and I do it, right? But I'm not dying for the job like Neil Warnock would say. I mean, I don't know. I get why fans don't like it, but at the end of the day, they're human beings. They're doing a job. Okay, they're trying their best, but at the end of the day, you leave your work behind you, don't you? That's my devil's advocate argument.
The thing about the training and shirt thing, why don't they just do it out of sight? Why don't they just do it down the tunnel? They all walk down the tunnel together. Then there wouldn't be this issue. Because we haven't even mentioned the Hojbjerg smiling at 3-0 thing, which I've seen today on Twitter, because obviously somebody's frozen their TV, taking a photograph of it.
You don't laugh, you'll cry.
He wasn't.
I'm not going to... Yeah, as the second member of the fan club, the honorary fan club, Hojbjerg fan club with Gibbo, I can say I've watched that in real time in terms of what happened. It wasn't a smile; it was a grimace smile.
And
it's just the camera
caught it, and it just looks.
Yeah, this is what I mean. People just try and jump on anything, don't they? So the whole shopping shirts thing, you're like, well, if they swapped him down the tunnel, no one would even know anything about it anyway. I remember seeing pictures. Is it Declan Rice in his upstairs loft? He's got a Son one, hasn't he? And I think he's got a Mason one, and he's got a Madison one as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't get what the big problem is. Going back to the Lloris thing, for me, I turned to the guy behind me and said immediately, wow, club captain hoiked off at halftime. Something dodgy's gone on here. Because at the end of the day, everything you said I agreed with. I don't think he should have played at Everton. It should have been Forster. And that's when everything sort of things weren't great this season, don't get me wrong, but and Sheffield United, we could go on, but it just seemed to kind of unravel more at Everton. And that was a situation where you said about the second half yesterday, Forster did play it out better. He could keep the ball in when he kicked it long. Romero passes it to him. I watched Romero a lot. He will pass it to him. Lloris won't. He won't kick it to Lloris. So there was that. I was disappointed that the sixth goal was scored, really, because I thought, at least we can say won the second half 1-0, and because Forster, deserves something. because the 6th goal wasn't pretty either, really.
No.
But yeah,
No.
I knew something must have gone on but then I come out today and hear that Lloris is apparently one of the ones in the committee, which allegedly Dier is one of the ones that was apparently arguing with. Yet they're on the committee together, and you're like, what?
There's too
and
many.
This comes back to what Alistair Gold said about hierarchy at the club, didn't he? He said about Moura and Moura getting playing time in front of Danjuma and things like that, because this is like sort of hierarchy, and that committee kind of like lends itself to that sort of idea, doesn't it? You know, we've all said that possibly Dier, Lloris and Hojbjerg have been 3 of our worst players this season. There's more than that, I get it. But for them 3 to be on the committee, it then just sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? And is it this idea that Conte was saying about selfish players, and what was he implying when he kept repeating the word selfish, and who's he aiming that at?
It just reeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think this committee thing, and I realise I'm starting to go in the shadows as the sun rises once more. I'll sort myself out in a minute. Again, I just want to emphasise I don't sit in darkness all day long. I know some people do think that. You know, look, in Aussie sports, there's a lot of talk about the senior leadership group, which I think and I think there is this concept of the senior leadership group. So, for example, the senior leadership group and the Aussie cricket team, there's been a lot of talk about that, and culturally, when, you know, Justin Langer was really ousted as coach of the Australian cricket team because of the senior leadership group, and they felt he was too intense. And then you go back a little bit to the whole sandpaper gate and the whole sandpaper gate and things like that. So this concept of the committee is the first time we've heard it. I do remember a couple of times in our history when Pleat left as manager, there was, I think, Clements and someone else picked the team for a game or two. And there was talk when Mr. Gross was on the verge of getting sacked, there was talk about Klinsmann and Mabbott was going to be made the co-managers by Sugar. So it's not, I just think that this whole thing about the committee, which we've seen today, and who's on it, and the hierarchy bit, I think that's a very Conte thing, to be honest, the hierarchy thing, because he goes with the most experienced players first and then he goes down, which is why Moura's got more game time than Danjuma, who, of course, is a club signing.
Yep.
Following on to the after the game, Becky, at the game, there was a lot mentioned about the players not coming over to clap the fans, the away fans, until there was an intervention again from Kane. How did you see that from your perspective?
Yeah, so this is why I'm so fortunate that I go to games and I love being at them, because you see all things that they don't show on TV. And I was, like I said, I was watching like the dugout and watching sort of at the end. And I remember I turned to Liz and I went, "Oh, hello, let's see, I do like, who's going to come over?" And I kind of, obviously they boom the sound as well. It goes massive, like throw all these songs out. And I went, "Look at Kane." He was kind of pointing in that direction. And he, like a straight arm like this, which no one has managed to get on the video. And the video that people have seen on Twitter, you just see Kane clapping. Before that, he points an arm like this. And he's kind of like summoning everybody, like really straight arm like this, which I haven't seen him do before. So Son came over, Davis came over, but he had his jacket on. Danjuma came over at the end. Romero sort of walks a little bit, claps, and then he goes off. He never really comes over very much. Dier came over and Hojbjerg came over, and Skipp, I think, and that's it. And even Son came over a little bit and then turned away. But yeah, it shouldn't need. I said on Twitter today, it shouldn't need Kane to do that. But good on him for doing that, because he gets what it means to us. And he, to be fair, I know that a lot went back to Sheffield United about how none of them came over at Sheffield United. In the defence of the players at Sheffield United, the stewards formed like a kind of arm of, like, when they all link at the edge of the 18-yard box after the Sheffield United game. So the players would have to have walked round that to come over to us. But yeah, it did take Kane to kind of come over yesterday, and it shouldn't. They should do it. I always say this, like when we say to the kids, you should do high five or something at the end of the game. It takes 2 seconds. Why does, like, for example, Lloris wasn't there because I was watching for Lloris. Lloris didn't come out. You're like, those players that I haven't named, like Perisic and Kulusevski and other people I can't think of. Why don't they come over it? It takes 2 seconds. If it takes 2 seconds, doesn't it? Just walk over and clap in the sky. It's not a big deal.
They should do, but these types of things that are happening are showing that there's like a deep-rooted problem in the squad, in what's going on, in how they're playing. They just can't be bothered. They just, like some of them do, and Kane comes over and does it. But as a group at the minute, it's just fragmented. It's just literally going through the motions, waiting for the season to end. They couldn't get off that pitch quick enough yesterday. It's just
the culture.
Yeah,
it's
that's
the culture.
That's the culture. That's where they're at. We've had this before with them when we've gone through. That's why we need to move on. We need to freshen this squad up. We need to churn out some of these players. There's too many players that have beat and I'm not going to dig him out. I'm just going to use his name. But players like Eric Dier, who have been through these situations 2 or 3 times now with various managers, and it's just water off a duck's back. It's happened before. We'll go through it. New manager will come in. I'm a senior player, so I'll keep. It's just going through the motions and going through it again. And the whole thing needs a shake up. And as we'll come on to later on, the statement about Stellini, and obviously maybe we'll talk about groups who are sort of demanding change and stuff like that. We might hopefully start to get somewhere at some point, but it's that's just where it is. That's just where this football team's at the minute.
Kerry's put in the comments that there's no connection between the fans and players anymore. You know, like I said at the show, top of the show, you know, Newcastle have got what we had last year. That kind of confidence, that connection with the club, the unity, the enjoyment of going to games, and that's not there. And you know, no one likes getting beat, but the little things like coming over and clapping the supporters that have travelled all those miles, and I don't include myself in that. It does take 2 seconds. It just encourages more angst and more sort of that disconnection. Do you know what I mean?
Bang on. Newcastle. Sorry, but I watched like first 20 minutes again. When Newcastle scored, their players, obviously as you do, but they were absolutely buzzing, and all the players around them, and they were. And I think they got a corner, and Isaac's like bigging up the crowd to get this corner because they're on the front foot. Spurs are completely the opposite at the minute. They don't want to interact with the crowd. They're just like, it's just like, let's get through this game and move on and just chibble away at every game and get rid. That's where Spurs are. Newcastle, the opposite end. They want to play. They love to be out there. They want the fans. They've got the fans screaming them on and stuff like that. And that it's just literally where we are as a football team at the minute.
Did anybody see that thing yesterday about how when we paid them in, was it 2016, and none of the players playing yesterday for Newcastle were playing that day, and 5 players are still remaining playing for Spurs?
Yeah.
And they were saying that idea that how, you know, you've got players that have been there a long time and have things got a bit stale, and then you've got Newcastle who have got these fresh players, and you know everything's sort of transferred, and the trouble is there's rumours, aren't there, even before yesterday, that Dier's going to be offered a contract, and they're trying to decide when to release it because of how it will go down. And Longley, whether Longley's being signed, and you know, Longley as a squad player, he's left-footed, is fine, but not if he's going to then be the signing when we were wanting people like Guardiola and all these other left-footed players. It's just, that's the problem. We've never been very good at moving players on. You know, we could talk a whole show about the amount of players that are going to come back in the summer.
Yeah.
It's the recruitment side of it. It's that bit as well. You know, yes, there's a loyalty, and I like a club that's loyal, and I think there's a lot of measure to that. But with a kind of rotational sort of idea at the moment, our squad is so thin that it's just relying on those, because we don't play any of the youngsters. You know, like you said, as soon as somebody comes back injured, they don't play. You know, we might not see Sarr now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think obviously we'll talk about Mason's appointment and committee and probably get to culture a bit later on.
Yeah.
But I think interesting thing that you're saying, Becky, about when we lost that 5-1 at the end of that season with Benitez and coming third in the 2-horse race. But I'll wind you a bit more forward to the last time that we played at St James's Park, which was the first game under the ownership for Newcastle. You had Steve Bruce's last game. He had an Endon Bellet score a goal for us, and Nuno was the manager. And it feels like such a lifetime ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you'd have said to those dancing Geordies that day, dressed in the attire that they was, that Eddie Howe will be your manager, Oh, and by the way, you're going to get the likes of Trippier, Pope. Because if you remember when City were bought in 2008, they got Robinho before he'd signed for Chelsea, and they got the marquee signing that was just completely ill-suited to where they were. There's a massive, obviously, discussion about the ownership of Newcastle, and that looks very much in the background that Levy was very much behind kind of not getting them permission to buy the club. And I think that I get the vibe that Levy's very much supporting what the moves against City and the charges and this, that, and the other. But that's another discussion. But my point is, if you said to those Geordies, you'd have got the out of work Eddie Howe, who'd got Bournemouth relegated, and now Miron, Jolinton,
Longstaff,
all that.
Willock.
Willock, he'd improved all of them, and you're on the verge of the Champions League. They're a year ahead of where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be Conference or Europa, but they've done that. So if you just said that to them, and also I think one of their other big signings was getting in, I think his name's Dan Ashworth, who set up St George, and because that's the whole point about the culture and the structure of that club. Leaving aside the ownership, is they're all aligned. So they have a playing style. They work closely together. They go in the transfer market and make signings to do that. And I think next season you will see them making more marquee signings because they've got Champions League.
The coach has a big say in that, though. Sorry, Craig. The coach has a big, like they've bought into what he wants to do, and he's embraced what they're about up there, and they've met somewhere in the middle, and they've pushed on Dave. That's what they're also doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're letting this guy work. They've made, like you said, we'll come on to it, but they're making good decisions. Spurs aren't making good decisions, as we'll come on to. But Newcastle, like you said, like we talk about what this Spurs team now for 5 years, watching them has been dreadful. The coaching, I think, has been. We'll have differences in opinion. We had a little purple patch where Conte got us into the top four. But our players don't know how to. I think we'll struggle to be able to pass the ball about and play front foot football for a bit because we haven't done it for so long. We haven't had coaches who have been interested in improving players. They just want new, better players. Yeah, and that's a downfall.
I think there's several. Sorry, James. 1 second. I think there's a couple of things there. There's a Newcastle should give us hope that. If we get the right manager in and we get someone that is going to, we can turn what we're doing around and we can get back to happy days relatively quickly. I think Newcastle's position, I know you made a point, Dave, about they're a year ahead. I also think it's fair to say that it's not been the best quality Premier League this year in terms of overall teams in and around that position. So that's probably helped them to get in there. And that's why we're still clinging on to fifth in the way that we are, because let's be honest, we should be nowhere near fifth. And we probably won't end up fifth. We may end up sixth, seventh, or eighth. But a couple of things there. Sorry, James, I cut in there.
It's fine. Look, I need to shoot off because I'm going out clubbing. But apologies, everybody. I know you missed my beautiful face and my tremendous opinions. Anywho, look, thing is, I think it's been a poor quality Premier League season. I think we all know that, this team has lost the ability to play front foot football, as you say, Craig. But that's why we need a huge squad rebuild. Whoever comes in, I don't care if it's Steve from the local bar. Hang on, right? Sorry, Phil. Someone said this last week, right? No, it's because there's this really good club night on a Monday near me, right? I haven't got lectures tomorrow, and the drinks are $1.50 each, so. What would you do? Anyway, look, thing is, there's just no leadership. Is there? You lose 6-1, fair play, Becky, and to everyone else who went, you've paid your money to go watch this match of football. And look, me and my dad went. And, if I go to Pompey or if I go to Spurs, I was thinking about going to the Palace game, won't go now. If I went there and we were terrible, it's fine for me. Because I can neck 7 pints and I'm still going to have enjoyed my day out, right? But not everyone's going to do that, are they? And the players won't even come over and applaud the fans for staying there till the end through that dreadful match of football until Harry Kane basically slaps him round the head and says, "Oi, show some bloody respect." Look, as people know, as I said last week, football players are human, right? And I don't think we should, treat them any way other than fellow human beings. But if I did a crap job at work and my response was dismissive, I'd be in trouble, right? It's not about how you necessarily, it is about how you perform, but your response to how one performs and the player's response, in other words, if I did a crap job and my response was, oh, whatever sort of thing, that's the issue. If you mess something up and you're apologetic to it, then you get a second chance, right? That's the real issue for me. It's the attitude towards the performance that's the real issue. The attitude towards the performance was whatever, we were terrible. And that speaks volumes. There are only 4 players, I think, who looked like they could build. Skipp was awful, but he looked like he was giving it a go. Sanchez wasn't brilliant, but he looked like he was giving it his all. Kane was giving it his all, and I think Foster was as well. Everyone else gave nothing. That's honestly what I think, and that's a real issue. This players' committee bollocks is like living in the bloody Soviet Union, isn't it? And comrade bloody Khrushchev doesn't like you, so you're not starting. It's just, mate, give me 5 bloody minutes with them, and I'll bloody sort it out. I'm sorry, any Spurs fan would, but it's not in the modern day. This does not work, and there needs to be a huge squad rebuild because some players have been there too bloody long, and they're stinking up the place of rotten fish and meat. And I got through that without swearing. So,
well done, mate.
Yeah.
Well done.
Please
well done, James. Have a great night clubbing.
Enjoy your night.
Just to go on as well, just to talk about again press conferences afterwards. So Lloris did come out afterwards, semi-apologised. I think it's fair to say. He said something along the lines of, "I think we should probably apologise to the fans." Without actually apologising, which was strange. And Stellini on the performance said, "The first 25 minutes were the worst I've ever seen. I hope that the system we changed to give us energy was the wrong decision. If it was that, it's my responsibility. We played with 4 at the back, and if this was a mistake, it is my mistake." So he's clearly putting blame on the formation change. Is that how you see it, Gibbo? Was it just a formation change? Was it as simple as that?
It's nonsense, mate. It's just waffle. It's just all of it. Didn't he say something about we weren't prepared?
We weren't prepared, yeah. I was getting to that next, yeah.
Mate, I mean this, and he's gone now, which we'll get to, but it's like in the end with Nuno. I don't want to hear him talk. I can't even be bothered to listen to him or at the minute with the crap they come out with. It's because it's just nonsense. It's just like saying what they think's right or whatever. Action speaks louder than words where Spurs are at the minute. But yeah, it's Craig. It was all of it. The poor format. Well, it's not the formation. It was the personnel picked in that formation. It's the attitude and the application of the players and just it's all those bits, mate. So
I think we said on here, formation, didn't we? We were hopeful that Stellini might be able to turn a corner with the players. There seemed to be a boost in kind of morale and confidence and the high-fiving, the chest pumping. I've said this before, in the Preston game, whether Conte was on the phone to him and all of that business. As soon as Conte has actually, officially left the country, it all just sort of unraveled. I keep using that word. He looked really out of his depth. We noticed that at Bournemouth when he didn't know what to do once, he brought Sanchez off. He knew he had to then take him off again. It seems like they're not being coached in the sense that someone's put in the comment earlier on that the formation that we played yesterday was when Newcastle had the ball. If we lost the ball, we just went and stood in spaces rather than, making tackles and getting second balls. And, I still remember couple of times when they were still playing out sideways yesterday, and it's like they don't know what to do. And I know people could listen to that and go, well, they're footballers and they should be able to know what to do. But if you've been so regimented into a set formation and then all of a sudden somebody put about how we might have practiced it on Friday as to what to play 4-4-2, it came across that it was like a very last minute sort of thing.
But you can't play 4-4-2 with 2 wingers as your fullbacks and play that high up the pitch. Yeah. It's just the whole lot of it. That madness. The decision. I can't get my head around it. I just cannot get. And I think it's a bloke who basically took the job and then decided during the week, I don't want this job. Just seems so out of his depth. really uncomfortable. I said to Craig earlier, like his media stuff, the stuff he says and how he comes across, it just smacks of a bloke who, in the end, didn't really want the job. Just a disaster.
But in his defence, and it's something that I'll give a small one. All right, a humble, small little defence. It's quite cute, and you can pat on the head later, right? I would say this, and it's a point that actually Conte said before he blew up, which was, why is it that the owner and why is it that Paratici doesn't come out and talk to the media? And he said, in Italy, you get that. You get, because we all wondered why on earth Paratici and Hitchin were high-fiving each other in the first 3 games of Nuno World, right? And just for Stellini's defence, you know, Conte's blown up. He's been put in front of the media, and he's having to deal with everything that he's had to deal with. Right now, I reckon that he probably was promised a fat bonus if he'd have got top 4. Right, but quite clearly he's out of his depth. But to have him in front of the media and explaining everything, it's a bit like. And I had a lot of respect for Tuchel last year when he's having to discuss foreign policy, Ukraine and Abramovich. Right, that's not his job. No. And that's where my sympathy is for him. But, you know, his 4-4-2 will go down with Nuno's Bergwijn Moura substitution. But then again, Conte's bringing on Sanchez, chasing that. Ben Davis left wing back or left back against Ronaldo. It's a list.
But Dave, Stellini he's only being asked to talk about why he's picking certain formations or how they're going to go out there and try and play, or how they're going to try and improve what we're doing. It's just like he's just so far out of his depth. It's just such a bad decision to appoint him. He's so woefully. I mean, do you think he'll go down as? I mean, I know he's an interim manager, as the worst Spurs manager ever.
Oh, that's a great question, Gibbo. That's a show to itself, because do
you mean when he was manager on his own rather than when he was being Conte when Conte was at home?
I think it's quite apparent now that Conte wasn't around the place, so that lifted the mood. But Conte was pulling the strings. I think that is
because we had some decent. There were some decent results when that happened. Obviously, there's Preston, I can remember, but there were some home games where, you know, the City game, for example, wasn't that Stellini, and games like that. Yeah.
But I think once he's took the reins himself, he's obviously the players have sussed him out pretty quick, as they do.
You've got to kind of. So you're measuring him against Santini, Gross, Nuno. That's a tough question.
I think he is, because I think, like I said to Craig, Bournemouth brings Sanchez on, has to bring him off after 20 minutes, right? This week, starts 4-4-2, has to bring a sub on after 20 odd minutes and change formation at 5-0 down. Comical. I mean, Gross was bad, but. I mean,
you could argue he has been worse, because you could argue that he's probably got the better squad than those in those examples. You know, if you go back to like the 90s, we talked tonight about, you know, the games where there was thrashings. It's supposed to be a better squad that's been assembled.
He's just looked that vague look of his onto the pitch. Like,
I take issue about a lot of people say that it's the quality. We've got a decent squad, or we've got a decent team. We just need a man. I don't think we do have a very decent team, but that's
it's better. Yeah, it's another discussion, Dave. It's better than it's performing. I think
it's better than the 90s.
I think there's
better than the late 90s. Yeah,
I think there's been a serious coaching issue at Spurs, but Stellini. My God, I can't think of many worse managers we've had than him. I don't think there's any. I think he will go down as the worst.
Well, let's ask this question: is he the worst Levy appointment?
Yeah, because he's the worst. So he's the worst I've seen.
Nuno was very odd, just because of the length it took to actually get him in place. That was the thing that was weird about Nuno, wasn't it? You know.
I mean,
he was the time it took to appoint him was longer than he was in post.
For me, and my final straw with Enic, and I've been accused of being an ambulance chaser this week. So there's not many ambulance chasers who's wearing tracksuit tops from 1977. But anyway, is AVB. I hated AVB. he so clearly was out of his depth at Chelsea that he didn't have the respect of the squad. And he came in there and he was a poor man manager. And Redknapp, I didn't disagree with him being sacked because he blew a 12-point lead and third place, which he should have got, right? But when they brought him in, and then I'm seeing Sandro and Livermore at home to Norwich and West Brom, and he's crapping on about Chelsea like a jilted lover. Arsenal are in a cycle of despair, and they still pitch us a top four. For me, it's AVB. Sorry.
No, mate. You can't have... But AVB didn't he, at the one point we got a record... Mate, he was boring, he was turgid, and he wasn't great with the players. But he finished...
AVB relied
heavily on Bale.
Massively.
Yeah, but this guy's Stellini, even for the few, is worse. Just a clueless clown. Yeah,
but
Stellini.
Yes, so if everyone's going to from an objective argument and a stats point of view and this, that, and the other, you would argue with everyone else. I just hated AVB from the start.
Yeah, I'll get that, mate. He was.
There's no coherent argument. I couldn't stand him.
So Davo's AVB worst managerial appointment. Gibbo, you're clearly Stellini. Where are you at, Becky?
Well, someone's put in the chat that obviously we had those 3 wins, didn't we, with Nuno, and the City game when Kane was not playing, and then but then we lose like then 3 consecutive games and we lost all the they were all like 3-0 as well, weren't they?
Didn't he? Yeah.
But then we lost 3 consecutive 3-0s, wasn't it? I think after that,
yeah.
Dave's right. You kind of get clouded by what you most recently remember as well, don't you? And I think arguably any manager that we've got rid of has been bad. They've never been great. I can remember someone's just put Jose. I was thinking that when people were chatting. Jose, I know there was lockdown, and you said earlier in the show about how the way he was, James said he's quite passive aggressive. I didn't like his kind of way about him. He brought Bale back, kind of cheered up a few people. Those games were hanging on to try not to lose, or just hanging on at 1-0s, and that wasn't pleasant either.
I think I say it's the worst appointment because I can't get my head round how they've got rid of Conte or everything. They got rid of him, and then somebody in power has gone, I think the best idea is to give the job to Stellini. Why do you think that is?
I think that was meant to be Paratici's last decision.
I think that the whole scenario regarding his appointment and then what's happened after, I think that's what's done it for me. It's just mind-boggling that we had that bloke in charge in the circumstances.
But I'd kept the backroom staff as well.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That
they possibly
scenario.
felt that they felt that there would be some continuity with keeping, like if they've been training to a certain structure or to certain tactics or formation, that's possibly their thinking. That's the only thing I can think of. It's interesting today that now Stellini's gone. They've all gone, haven't they? There's been a complete change in backroom staff.
But you change a manager or a coach because you want things to change. I can't see how and I get what you're saying, Beck, but I can't see why you'd say we got to get rid of Conte because we want change, but we'll get Stellini in for continuity. Do you know what I mean? It's like the ultimate, just weird. It's the whole thing was just weird.
So coming off the back of that performance and the Stellini press conference, I think it was inevitable that change had to happen and action had to be taken. And sure enough, late this afternoon, our notifications all pinged to the news that Levy had let Stellini and the coaching staff go and installed Ryan Mason, deja vu, in for the final few games of the season after conversations with the Players' Committee, in which they are united in trying to create the strongest possible end to the season. And we have got an exclusive for Cheese Room listeners tonight. We have got an actual photo of the Players' Committee right here.
There they are, look.
There they are in all their glory. I'm not quite sure how Kudus ended up in there, but apparently he is it. But no, in all seriousness, we have touched on the players' committee. The rumours that what's been said about on Sky. No, it's fine. What's been said on Sky Sports of the players' committee is Kane, Dier, Lloris, and Hojbjerg. Are the players' committee, if you like.
Where's Son in that? Why is Son not in that? He's a captain for his country, and he's been there just as long as the rest of them. Why is he not there?
Well, let's ask. Yeah, Davo, why is Son not in there?
I've been on many committees in my life. You're asking me from I'd like to know who sets the agenda, who takes the minutes, who follows up on the action points, and who takes care of AOB.
Sonny would be good at all of those. He seems like the type of person who would be very good at making sure everybody was, having their say and having their input. He'd be the person who'd make sure everybody was, happy with what was going on.
So I'm presuming, Becky, that I think with your role, you sit on governors' meetings, committees, and parent. Yeah. So this is the thing, right? Is that I think that the players' committee is quite amusing, really. So Ben Davies, is there like a vote amongst the squad? I mean, Ben Davies, why isn't he not on there? Why? What's happened to? And you're right, Sonny, he's not on there either, and things like that.
We call them clicks, don't we?
Well,
it's a click. That's what it is, mate. It's not a committee. That's the posh name for it. It's a click.
Yeah. So if do you want to talk about the actual appointment and culture and this, that, and the other? Should we get onto that now?
Yeah, we will get there. Just
okay.
Very quickly on the committee. I don't think it is a committee per se. As
no. Sorry, I keep laughing.
No, it's funny.
Isn't that word used in Levy's statement? It uses something like we've been with the
committee. Yeah, I think the players' committee is essentially the vice captain and the captain, and the senior pros, the senior pros, and
it was just Sonny. Sonny's one of those. He's a senior pro.
Yeah. No, we don't. The reality is we don't know who was or who wasn't involved in the conversation. But I don't believe there is a committee where they voted on and then they discuss everything that goes on in the club. I do believe that Levy talks to them.
Yeah. So years ago, like when you hear Roy Keane talking, I've read his book. Like the senior pros would have been like Steve Bruce and Keane, people like that, and they'd have sorted tickets out for players' families, and they'd have been. They'd have sort of been a link between it. And years ago at Spurs, it would have probably been your likes of Mabbott and Ledley King. And like you said, the captain and vice captain and people who they bring in close, who they feel in the changing room are the bigger personalities. That's what it is. And they've called them the players' committee. And every team will have that. So he's basically just consulted the senior pros, hasn't he? But made it sound posh by saying players committee.
Sorry, I keep laughing. You can mute me.
No, it's funny. It is funny. It is funny. I mean, the funny
we have to laugh. We said this yesterday. We have to laugh. If we didn't laugh, we'd cry. So we have to laugh.
Exactly.
There was some real good clips. I don't watch a lot of TalkSport. It has idiots on it most of the time. But like, they had Hawksby and Jacobs. I do like. Obviously, he's a Spurs fan. And they had Danny Kelly on earlier, and Hawksby said that. He said when it got to 5, he said, I just started laughing. Yeah. He said, I just literally started laughing. I couldn't, nothing else to do. And I think that's the point we're at the minute, isn't it? We just feel like...
We are a laughing stock. We are a laughing stock. It's like every day there's something that, it just comes out and you think... I've seen the picture with Levy dressed like with a clown mocked on his face. We have become like a club of clowns, and this is literally true. Those of you that are watching this who were with me yesterday, we were on the train back to Middlesbrough, and I swear to God, there was a 12-year-old and like an 8-year-old, and he was going, "What do you think of Tottenham? What do you think? Tottenham?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this is what we've become. This is like an 8-year-old who'd gone to the Metro Centre."
I was with lots of sort of like different fans yesterday, and all of them were cheering every Newcastle goal. Like Liverpool fans who were trying to get above us but are trying to challenge with Newcastle. Like I said, I was with a load of Villa fans, and at the they are literally ripping it. People texting you all right, mate? How's it going? Football's the winner today, and all that type of thing. It's just like and you've just got to laugh because you just get wound up and get into arguments. It's just like,
and we were like that last year. We talked, didn't we, on here about how many points we needed and what was going to happen at different games, and we said that yesterday. Newcastle can have their day. It's whether they can push on from that now. And it's the same with Villa. I said to some of my friends yesterday, I genuinely, and everyone knows I'm really positive, and I'm still going to all the games. Only game I'm missing is probably Leeds. I'm not going to United because it's a school night. I don't think we will win any games from this point on, even with Mason in charge. I think looking at it yesterday, it's such a disarray that I genuinely don't think we will win any games now. And I would never think like that. You always think, oh, there's a game we could get this from, and I just don't see it. Really?
I think, well, we said before, didn't we, Beck, before it went really stinking, we thought we'd probably do all right at home, but we would struggle the away games. And now it feels as though we're going to just struggle every game.
Yeah, but Palace might be on Magaluf Beach by the time we play them, so we could win that one.
Yeah, but so are our players. They'll both all be on. It'll be a shit off.
So obviously, moving forward, then we've got however many games left of the season. Not many. Final, was it 6 games, whatever it is. We've got Mason in charge. What happens now? What changes with Mason in charge? Do we expect to see anything fundamentally different?
So I'm just bringing up some start messages there.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix to turn if he wants to turn around and go, I want us to play on the front foot and I want us to. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. We struggle with the basics like passing and moving. We haven't done it for so long. I think we can literally play that 3-4-3 where we sit back in it teams on the break and rely on Kane, and we did on Son. Like, I think we are so regimented and that drilled into us that it's going to be really tough to really change anything. I think the only thing we can hope is that the mood improves and the attitude and application of the players is better, and that can get us some results. I genuinely think that's where we're at. I think even if say, let's just pull in the name out, if we appointed Nagelsmann tomorrow, I don't think he'd be able to turn a lot round straight away. I think we need to get this manager sorted early because they're going to need get Mason in, but say this is who's taking over in the summer. He can start looking at what he's got, and we're going to have to change personnel and attitudes. And like Dave said, we'll probably come on to culture. It needs a massive turnaround. And just one other thing on what Levy said in his statement tonight. He said it's on him, didn't he? He said this one's on me. Now, I know that's not a big thing, and only time will tell. But I think
the obvious as well.
Yeah, stating the obvious, absolutely. But I don't think. I think he started well. That is a little. Hopefully, that is a little. What's been happening at Spurs? He's seen how bad it's got, and there's nobody there now. Beck, there's no manager. There's no director of football. Everything is on him now. That's it. There's nobody to hide behind. And I'm hoping that he's going to take some responsibility and take some ownership. Obviously, he's the owner anyway, but of this situation now and start doing the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first time I've seen a statement from Daniel, COYS, where he's actually said, ultimately the buck stops with me. I'm accountable.
Yeah.
Davo, is that what you want to hear from him? Do you want to hear more of that from Levy? Taking responsibility for these decisions.
I feel like I've been asked a leading question here, so but
I generally haven't, mate. I'm just
no, Dave, because obviously, Dave, we know your take on the Enic out thing and everything, but we're not just going to be able to go Levy on your bike. So what? And it's not going to. So what we need is we need to make him accountable for better footballing decisions, and if we're going to do something, we need to demand that he does that, make better decisions before we start trying to get him out. So hopefully, this is a minimal sort of where he may have realised what a fucking nightmare he's having.
Well, as they say that self-awareness is the first step of the 12 steps to recovery.
Yeah.
So he's hit number 1, right?
We're off.
I don't know what step number 2 is.
No.
No. Obviously, I only ever got to number 1 and didn't do anything after that. So my thoughts of this. Well, first of all, well done on the timing of the announcement. Not it's not buried after the end of spitting
10 o'clock
on the Sunday night, and you know, and it does feel like every time I wake up every morning, there's something else going on in the land of Tottenham. So look, I think so. There's a couple of things here. One is he understands that look, there's nowhere to hide on this because it's so clearly obvious what's going on. So he's made the change. My advice to Ryan Mason is that in the summer, if he wants to develop his coaching footballing career, he actually goes to get a number 2 job somewhere else lower down the league or takes on a head role. He can't continue to be the business continuity plan at Tottenham. I think what you'll see with Mason is, and I pointed this out with Stellini, that I knew that Lloris would come back in straight away instead of Forster, because when you're the interim manager, your authority is very low and you don't want to get the senior players offside. So Lloris comes straight back in, and Sonny, not playing well, wasn't dropped, right? So Levy's well aware of the fact that he needs to sort it out. Scott Munn's coming in just July the 1st. He's on gardening leave now. I'm sure he can be involved in the decision. What I want to see, I don't know which way around you do it. You get the director of football in first to replace Perisic, and then you appoint the manager. Or if we're getting Nagelsmann in, then you say to Nagelsmann, who is the director of football that you want to work with or you can work with, right? Because you've got to have, it's so important now. And what Levy's got to get right, and he's never really got it right because he can't make decent football decisions. He never could. And he now may realise this now, is that you've got to have the director of football, the Scott Mann, whatever his name is, director of football, and the first team coach, all aligned, and then down to academy. That's what you need. And if he doesn't realise that now, you know, he's been doing it for 22 years now. And as I said, for as far as I'm concerned, he has no credibility in making football decisions. So that's what he's got to do, is get the alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Becky, going on to culture then. We know we've talked a lot on these shows about the culture at the club. And I think the culture has been rotting away, if you like, and since Pochettino left, to be honest, or maybe just before Pochettino left, I think it's been on its decline. We're in the state that we're in now. What do you think needs to happen to start to readdress that culture at the club? You know, is it about effective leadership? Is it about new players coming in, you know, leaders being added to that group, or is it all of those things and more?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Davo said. You know, it's got to be in alignment. We've talked this season about them lot down the road and about how that's been aligned and how there is this sort of idea that they trusted him and, you know, the players that they've got in. I keep hearing about Brighton. I didn't see the Brighton Man United game yesterday, but, you know, everyone's saying about how the way they play. We saw that when we played Brighton. You know, their recruitment is good. They've got like watching Eddie Howe yesterday, you know, this sort of idea that they're trusting in who they've got. They haven't necessarily got big names. The same with Brighton. You know, Brentford have had a fairly decent season. I know them and Fulham have tailed off a little bit now. But, you know, I've heard a lot. I don't listen to TalkSport much either, but I've heard a lot of people like Everton fans going, oh, these Spurs fans are crying because they're fifth. And, you know, I wish I was fifth and I wish we'd have all these problems that they've got. And this sort of idea that, you know, everything's collapsing, but it goes deeper than that. It's the way the whole structure of the club is just sort of completely dissolving. And like you said, they've been there long enough. You know, it feels like it's just been since Poch left, but it is before that as well. You know, the commercial side of the club is all sorted now. They do need to move on. What's interesting though is I remember when Doherty left and he said something in his leaving press conference about how, you know, big things are coming to Tottenham. I remember Joe Hart using that phrase as well. And I keep remembering that and thinking, where are these big things that they keep saying? It's almost like they're trying to kind of, you know, I was interested to read back Levy's statement today. I expected him to put something along the lines of, you know, our loyal fans, because I think he's starting to realise that all we want is just some sort of progress, some sort of building on, and, you know, whether it be recruitment, whether it be sort of, kind of in cup competitions and this sort of stepping stones and building and building and building. And there is that kind of loyalty that, we just want, we're not asking for a great deal, but we just want to see nice attacking football, and we want to see us, build on things. And that's where it feels so bad, because the last 6 months of last year was so fun, so much fun to be a Spurs fan. And then this year, people are just sort of, they're just being ground down. And then when you've got people like Everton fans going, swap with us and be in our situation, and like, it's not about that. We're a big club, we pay a lot of money. We thought things, once the stadium was in place, we thought things were going to kind of build, and they haven't done. So I think it does come, it's a top-down thing. And I think I agree with David, what did you do? Interesting about Nagelsmann. Nagelsmann apparently was waiting because he wanted Champions League football. Well, we aren't getting Champions League football now. So how does that change for him? Is it kind of leaning towards company and it being that complete project manager? It needs sorting, but I don't want it to be rushed. I want it to be not rushed in the sense that I want it done like early July. I don't mean September, but if it needs to be in alignment, there has to be this sort of, Levy's almost got to say, I am not going to be involved at all. This Scott Munn is going to be the person, and then director of football, and he's got to. I don't know if Levy can do that, and that can, to be there 22 years and have that much control must be for him quite hard to sort of step away from it. But
will Scott?
I don't think he's going anywhere. Yeah, you'd think so.
Because that's his job, isn't it? I think Levy will pick the coach, and then I think all those other footballing decisions will then be left to Scott Munn. I think the one thing Levy will do is get a manager in. If they're going to get another sporting director, they'll get a manager who's happy to work with the sporting director. Will get in, and then I think Munn will start making all the other footballing decisions. I think they'll be concentrating on the coach now, big time. Because what's about to happen at Chelsea will kick their ass into gear, because he will get, rightly or wrongly, whatever people think their opinions on Poch. We knew that Conte wasn't staying for ages, and Chelsea lost their manager a little bit around the same sort of time as us, yet looks like they've got an appointment in. And we knew our manager was going. We're still no closer to getting anybody by the looks of it. That's going to go down like a frigging lead balloon.
Cameron in the group chat has mentioned what I was going to say, which is we just physically can't wait for Munn to start to appoint the manager.
No, exactly. You can't do that. That is where they I'm sure now they'll be, full steam ahead trying to sort that. And I'd probably say that they will be going. They'll see if they can get Nagelsmann around, because I think he'll appeal to Levy. There's been talk of other people, but I think they'll be trying to get that sorted as quick as possible now.
Do we need to see a turnover of players in order to really improve the culture at the club? Is that integral to it, or is it about everything, Davo, you said, getting the leadership bit right, getting the alignment right, getting the right manager in? Is that enough of a catalyst to really push that culture where you want it to go?
I think it's a whole mixture of those things. If I first of all, just looking at Poch, if I look at the Poch reign, I think for me, where Poch kicked in for me is that New Year's Day that we stuck 5 past Chelsea, and Kane got a hat trick, and so that season it was all. He looked a little, I was a little bit underwhelmed when we got him in. I understood why. It felt at the start it was a little bit AVB, but his job, as he was told by Levy, was to get a tune out of the Beatles, who'd been signed the previous year, and he had to sort out your Kabuls, Lennons, and Adebayors and all the rest of it, right? And we got to a League Cup final, and that Chelsea game, I think, was the one that everyone started going, hang on, there's something going on here. And that's the kind of season that you'd want to see next season from the low of this season, right? So there's that aspect to it as well. To quote a former striker of ours, Stevie Archibald, he says, team spirit is an illusion glimpsed in the aftermath of victory. And he was a very solitary man who got a lot of goals for us, but he played in a team that had a great culture. There's a great book called The Boys from White Hart Lane. I really recommend anyone to read, which talks about that team, because you had a lot of local lads coming through then You had some non-league signings in Galvin and Roberts, and then you had your Ideal, and that team felt as one. And I think with Pochettino, he came in, he unified the club, but it was very clear in the last 12 to 18 months he'd had enough. And I do always go back to before the biggest game in our club's history. He said, if we win the Champions League final, I'm off. And he made it about him and not the team or the club. And I think that was a massive error. So from a cultural point of view, if the next manager comes in and he says to Levy and the director of football, from a culture point of view, I want Dier, Son, I'll take the money for Kane. I want Lloris to get rid of him. He's got a year. If he goes, I want these 5 out the door. They're not good for my culture. Then Levy says, fine. And if that means writing off a contract, just like the Goons did with Ozil, Aubameyang, he got, Arteta got all the bad cultural influences out of that club, right? And that now has to happen with us. So if the new man comes in a day after Eric signs on the dotted line and says, I want him out the club, or he wants Hojbjerg out the club, then he gets backed and out the door he goes. And it may well be some people who are popular with us emotionally and as your Hojbjergs, your sons, whatever the new person says goes, and we have to back it as however uncomfortable as that's going to be for all of us.
Spot on, mate. Spot on, mate.
I think I agree everything you've just said there, David. My question is then for the panel, whoever the new manager is, and we can speculate, we have speculated about that till the cows have come home. Does it have to be a statement in the same way Poch was, i.e. this is a 5-year contract, we're behind this guy, we're going to follow him, he's going to see this change through. And if we bring someone in on another 2-year contract, how would you feel about that?
I mean, mate, just to clarify, I don't want the club to sell Kane. I don't want them to sell Son. I think Hojbjerg would be a good squad player in a better squad. But I totally agree with Dave, just to back him up. If that's if we hang our hat on someone and that's what they want to do, then that is what you must do. That is what the club must do to move forward. But I mean, do I think they'll give somebody a 5-year contract? I'm not sure. How many managers are on massive contracts nowadays? The smaller contracts a bit. Obviously, Chelsea with Potter and stuff like that, but they don't seem to be handing out massive contracts to managers these days, do they? So,
I think Levy or Dan mentioned it in the recent video, didn't he? He did at Harvard or Oxford, whichever one it was, and he talked about exactly the point that Cool has put in the chat, that 2-year contracts in the continent are seen as regular. There's a lot more emphasis on the overall club as opposed to the manager. Whereas in England, culturally, we are different. And, but if you're bringing in a manager, and I think we had the same conversation. Let's not look too far back about Conte. We said to Conte, if you're really committed to this project and rebuilding us, sign the contract.
And he didn't want to.
Contract, and he didn't want to. But I guess if let's say, for example, it's Ange or it's Nagelsmann or whoever it is that comes in, and it's a 2-year contract, and that manager turns around and says, Kane's a bad egg, get him out. Do you still back that manager? Or would you, do you see where I'm going? Or would you rather have a bit more certainty, as much certainty as you can have, that this manager is committed to seeing this rebuild through?
Yeah, I mean, but I think the best you'll probably get now as well from the side of how we get rid of our managers. I think you're more likely going to get like a 2-year contract with the option of the 3rd on the table. Because obviously if we have to get rid, because people don't just leave now, do they? You don't want to be, we've been caught out too many times, mate, by paying massive compo. So I don't think we're going to get someone on a bigger contract. I think that's what we're looking at, 2-3 max with an option of a 4th, maybe. But it depends it depends who the manager is as well, doesn't it? It depends who the new coach or the incoming manager's going to be and how they view it.
Let me ask this question then, Becky. If it's a project manager, is by that definition of a project manager, whoever that might be, an Angie or whoever, would you be, do you think that to do this project and to see it through, they need longer than 2 years? What are we
I was
talking about?
just thinking that as you were sort of saying it, because wasn't Conte's 18 months with an option to extend, and as you kind of get to sort of 9 months, 10 months, 11 months into that, you're thinking, oh hello, he's not staying, he's not sticking around here, is he? So I think it's like almost like you need a balance between the kind of continuity of knowing the person is going to be around, because otherwise they've always got in the back of their head, well, I'm off and I'm not going to stick with it. I think listening to what you said, I know my camera went a bit funny, but then to what you were saying a bit earlier about, players coming in, managers coming in and then going saying, X, Y, and Z will go. Problem is, all of those X, Y, and Z players you just said were the ones that are allegedly on this committee. That's why I talked about that control again. Is Levy going to be able to say, that's okay, yeah, I completely trust you, let those people go? Because he's thinking from a financial point of view, he's thinking from a kind of commercial point of view as well. I'm not sure he's at that point yet where he can wholeheartedly say, yeah, all right, I completely trust you, get rid of those 5 and we'll get some money. And also goes back to what we said before, our recruitment at getting those players in to replace, we had this conversation about Bale and those players that came in to replace Bale. It's the recruitment has got to be right, and all of that has kind of got to come in together. I just think Levy just needs to move away from all of that completely and have no say in it. And like I said a minute ago, I'm not sure he's ready for that yet. I know he says it, but he's got to do that, and that has got to be actioned. I think, in terms of in answer to your question about contracts, I think I said last week, I'm not particularly bothered who we get really. I just want it to be for the right reasons and it be thought out enough.
Yeah, I think the issue with the contract length. Sorry, Gibbo. And the reason I asked the question is, I don't see an issue with contract length for managers. I'm 2 years is perfectly normal. I think the problem is our fan base see an issue with contract lengths. We, big established clubs. Let's look at Pape at Man City. He runs on a rolling year-to-year contract effectively. He doesn't sign long-term contracts. There's never any question mark about him signing or staying on. He's quite, everyone's content with that big club mentality. I don't think we're quite there as a club yet. So let's say, for example, we get Company in as an example on a 2-year contract, and he has a good first season. What happens in the going into that second season? He's replacing Pep. He's going to, and that's all the noise will suddenly be is that, and that. He's not committed to Tottenham. And I think that's as much an issue about us as a fan base as it is about Company or whoever the manager is. And I think we saw that with Conte. When he was doing well at the end of last season, he needs to sign a new contract. He needs another year. He needs another 2 years, whatever it is. And he didn't do it. And that's our issue, I think. That's our insecurities as Tottenham fans. I think we're always looking to what next.
Because if it's going well and it's working, they'll sign a new contract, won't they? If it's going well and it's working, the only reason you don't sign a new contract is because it's not going right and you need to part ways.
That they know that there's things going on behind the scenes that they aren't happy with. I think it's that side of it as well. Things were going well at the end of last season, but Conte didn't sign. So it's like an indication that, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And that kind of rant from Conte kind of sort of brought some of it to the fore. I think that's the other side of it as well, is it just sort of shows up what's going on there.
I think whatever, to my mind, the contract length should be what is the standard market contract length of a manager, where the perception is that he is here for a good while, right? So the Pep example that you give, he's Pep. He can do whatever he likes because of his track record, right? Yeah. But that's not who we're going to get in, right? So to my mind, there's two things. One is the contract length, as I said, should be commensurate to what the market perception, what the fan base perception is. This is someone who's here for the medium to long term. We know how it goes in football. And the second thing I would be doing is due diligence around the fact of, so for Nagelsmann, my understanding is his personal circumstances is he's got 2 kids and I think he's divorced. What's the situation there? I don't want to get into personals and the rest of it, but Conte didn't want to move his daughter out of high school. That's his choice, and that's life is more important than football. But again, it goes to the perception. Mourinho was stuck in the Lowry Hotel for 2 years in Manchester, right? And he's getting his garlic bread and soup delivered every night to his room. So what I'm saying to you is that you're getting someone in. So if Big Ange is up in Celtic, he's bringing the family down to London. So I would be putting the contract that you've got to live in Brookman's Park, Hadley Wood or Cockfosters.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, you just want commitment, didn't you? Like you say, that's the thing. You want to whatever that commitment length looks like. When I think when Poch first come in, I think it was a 5-year contract, wasn't it? He signed when he first joined Spurs.
Yeah, and he moved to Cockfosters.
Yeah, and he moved to Cockfosters. Yeah. Interesting. So, I guess it's a good question at Eddie then. Clearly, Mason's here to the end of the season. Are we any closer to understanding who our next manager will and won't be? We know it won't be Poch. So who are we sort of edging to this week?
Well, obviously Nagelsmann has come up again, hasn't it? Because he was out the Chelsea running. So I think he's a big shout. I think that's the one that would appeal to Levy. But I think Romano said today that we have actually spoken to Company, haven't we?
Company, yeah.
And we've heard rumours about that. So I think you're looking at Nagelsmann, Company, and then out of the other, it could be whether they're going to get out of the other ones. Do you know what I mean? Like if those two don't come off, then it will turn into a little bit like the old Nuno saga, but with better managers involved. I should imagine. Yeah, well, you've got the guy from Feyenoord who seems quite an impressive figure, haven't you? I don't think Rodgers is in the running. I think that people just putting 2 and 2 together. I don't think he's in it. Maybe Ange. A lot of people are talking about him, but I think Nagelsmann and Company are probably the 2 top targets. But that's just an opinion.
Where are you at, Becky, this week?
I don't know. As Lee McQueen said on Sky Sports News earlier, until it's mathematically impossible for Poch to be here, then we go. But you know more than I do. I don't. Has he definitely gone?
He was never even considered for the Tottenham job, I believe.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, I don't know, and we've talked about this. Some people know more than I do. I'll just wait and see.
Yeah. I think we can confidently predict that he will be at Chelsea in the next confirmed
2 days,
in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, you think 2 days?
He'll be there in days, mate.
Yeah. Let's just touch on that very quickly. I know we have talked about it off air. I'm sure people who are listening would want to know our views. How would you feel, Becky, if and when Pochettino is holding up that Chelsea shirt?
Well, I've seen someone's WhatsApp me today that in the dugout and Kane in the Chelsea shirt being subbed on, which would never happen because Kane never gets subbed on. He starts. I don't. You're preparing yourself for the worst. It's like when Eriksen was kind of lauded at the Brentford game, wasn't he, last season away? I said this last week. I think I tweeted it. If he does go to Chelsea, then this, and me included, this whole sort of he's going to come back, and at some point he's going to come back, and yada yada yada, has to stop now because you can't. I know the joke is that we always take ex-Chelsea managers, but that can't be a thing anymore. Whether he was waiting for the owners to leave and then come back, and whether they haven't contacted him and all of that, but if he goes there, then that's it. We need to stop asking for him back and completely move on. We've ripped the plaster off and we get it on.
Yeah. Dave, are you still nursing that plaster, or has it already gone for you?
Poch. Look, I know I'm going to get into trouble with Becky and lots of other people. I didn't want him back. I'm really sorry. I loved him for a long while. But by the end, I think his race had run. I think he'd been exhausted, to be honest with you. And I think that the way that he plays football and the high pressing energy, that if you're not going to get reinforcements in to stock up on that, then you've got problems. And we didn't buy anyone for a year and a half. I know that's not his fault, but it's quite clear by the end he'd had enough. And I always think that going back never works. It's been pointed out to me a couple of people, like Zidane going to Madrid does work, but that's Madrid. It will not be a great feeling, to be honest with you, emotionally, to see him with the Chelsea shirt on or waving the Chelsea scarf and that kind of thing. So that, from an emotional point of view, not that don't feel that great about it, but I'm not that bothered about it at the same time. The thing is that no doubt that this will be used to support some narratives. Like one, Poch is now a Judas because he's going to Chelsea. I think that's a load of old nonsense.
Rubbish. Yeah.
Because, there's a tweet or something from the guy who wrote the book with Guillaume
Balaguer, yeah.
Yeah. There's a quote from him saying that he never got approached. He had an indirect approach. So he's not offered a job. He's out of work and they've gone for him. I'm looking forward to seeing him in his second book talking about working for Todd Boehly versus Daniel Levy. That'd be entertaining. So that's that one. And then the second bit of narrative is everyone will burn the house down with, metaphorically, with Levy, because Levy let Poch go to Chelsea, which, as I said, I'm not a Levy fan, but I think that's a load of nonsense as well. Who I want to see next as our manager is, it's like you kind of want the pre-Poch, don't you? So you want, I'd take the guy at Feyenoord. Slot looks very interested. He's done punched way above his weight in terms of what his resources that he's had in his time there, and plays entertaining football and looks like a big character. I'd take Thomas Frank in your pre-Poch. He's done it for 2 years with Brentford in the Premier League, and no Ericsson. I'd look at De Zerbi. In fact, he had a fight with Stellini now. Nice one. I'd look at those ones. I don't want quote unquote damaged goods. I don't want Potter. I don't want Rodgers, although it'd be funny to see HG's reaction, which I've said more than once. That's who I want. And the idea, as I said, alignment, play entertaining football, get to a domestic cup final, we see progress, reconnection with the fans, and there's no sacred cows.
Yeah.
There's no, I think we spoke about this in our group chat, Dave, that for every manager that we bring in, that there will be, that there's a risk. There's a reason why you say about a certain manager and someone's like, oh, but he's this or he's that. There's no perfect. So there's no perfect. Nobody seems perfect coming for the job. But regarding Poch, we never wanted him. So for me, don't get me wrong, I loved Poch. The Poch era was brilliant. But he was burnt out. He was in a loveless marriage with Levy at the end, and it had to end. He got back. Obviously, that's down on Levy. But I'd love to have him back, mate. But he moved. He's not our manager. We didn't want him. I want us to get the bloke we want in. But
equally, we want the person who wants to be here, not like you said. Even Romano was tweeting today that it was between Poch and Nagelsmann. But Nagelsmann is not. And then they even listed company in the list. And I was like, he's just going to rehash that tweet tomorrow and put Tottenham at the top of it. You want someone who wants to be here, and it wants to be their first choice as well, because otherwise that's a mess.
The club don't want him, do they? The club don't want him. Simple as it. And they need to get the man that they want. If they're going to, it's no good bowing to, if you don't want him, it's no good bowing to fan pressure or pressure in the media to get him. They've got to do what they want, and they don't want him. And I don't.
But equally, if they do want other
managers, going there,
what have they been doing for the last month? Even before, I've talked about this before in the World Cup. If they had the meeting in the World Cup and it didn't go well in January, they should have been, doing due diligence over who they were going to get.
Should have.
If it was that we were going to get Tuchel, was that true? And Tuchel said that he was going to come to London, and the next minute he's going. Is that true as well? You just want somebody. You just want them to get on with it. I tweeted this last week. They didn't do anything quickly. To be fair, sacking Stellini, he has been fairly swift, but they didn't do anything particularly quickly, because they'll argue that they're doing the right things in the background. The problem is that hasn't really worked out either, because that hasn't worked with Paratici, and so
I don't particularly think they know what they want to do, Beth. I don't really think they have that. I don't think they've got it planned out that well. And I genuinely mean that, which is sad. So I genuinely don't think they have planned it very well at all. We need to be in a position where when our manager goes, as Brighton do, you sort of got a list of succession people to succeed him. But we don't work like that. We couldn't do that with Paratici, because we didn't even know if he'd be inside or free, do we, or whether he could work. We had a director of football who we didn't even know was going to be able to work. So it was just we can't have a succession planning, because we don't even know if half the people are going to be available to work. So
Sam said it though. Sam says that they may already know who it is and they can't say. Wonder who that would be.
What company?
Match fixing he got accused of at the weekend, didn't he? So yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, I said to my Dave at home, since we've been more rumoured with them, he's got them promoted, and then they haven't won since, have they?
No,
like he's definitely coming to Spurs. It's already the tarnish is already like rubbing off.
Yeah, I think the sorry, I can't remember what I was going to say, and I've lost my chain of thought. But what I was going to say, 122 people watching currently. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. It's so important to the channel for you to like and to subscribe. It's just a tick of a box. It takes you 2 seconds. Do it now, and yeah, it really helps us moving forward. My final question, I guess, before we wrap up at the 2-hour mark, it's been a marathon 2 hours. That 4-year decline we've talked about, the culture and everything else. One of the consistents during that 4 years has been Mason. With the new manager appointment, does it need a complete wipeout? Does he go, and do we have this complete refresh or restart, or do you still see there's a place for Mason to be our forever interim manager in the future?
No, I think Dave was right. Sorry, I think Dave was right earlier. I think we either send him back to do his work in the academy if that's what he wants to do, or go out. Don't always be that, like what Chris Hughton did at Spurs, just drop in and take over the reins for a bit and never get seen as a manager in your own right. I think you move on before you get tarnished with that.
Yeah, because people have already put in the comments about how he'll just pick his mates and all of that business, and it's like I don't know, on our WhatsApp group there were people saying, oh, he loves the club and that will really bode well. That's great. That, and it kind of works to a point. What happens when it isn't working tactically for your mates? That's where it's the trouble. Yeah, but
yeah, my little bit of an issue with Brian Mason is that we've kind of seen and noticed when he's not been happy decisions made from the bench. Now, I don't know whether the camera were or whatever with the Milan home game when Sanchez came on, right? The fact of the matter is you're part of the management team and the coaching team. So therefore, even if you disagree with the decision, you don't show it publicly. And I felt, to be very cynical, it was a little bit of playing to the gallery then. And he's been doing that a little bit. And in any organisation, when you have a leadership team, if you don't like the decision, you keep that very, very in house. And I think I don't think he's been very clever around that, from my perspective. And as I said, look, we've got 5 games to go, and then as I said, from his career's point of view, he should look to go elsewhere. And then by way of the new thinking, whomever comes in, and a clever person who comes in goes, right, I'm coming into the club. I want one person on my coaching staff who's actually part of the staff. So Mourinho was a little bit clever getting Ledley King to do it. And then I'd come in and I'd go, well, I'd like Yaya Toure or even Defoe. Not someone I just want someone who understands how the place works and is that linkage. If you're a clever person and you don't see it as a threat, then that's what you should do, but not Mason.
All right, guys. Well, I think it's been a great 2 hours debate, and we've got into the detail there. Plenty more to come. We've obviously got the upcoming game against Thursday night against Man United. Very quick predictions. If we just go round the room, Gibbo, start with you. Predictions, Man United.
Not a Tottenham win. That's all I can offer.
Right. Okay, Davo.
We're going to lose 3-1.
All right. Does Lloris start in goal?
No.
He won't play again this season,
I
mate.
hope not.
No.
Okay.
If he's had a muscle injury to be hoiked off at half time, it's not going to be recovered by Thursday, is it?
Well, if he's had an injury, yeah. Are you going, Becky? Thursday?
No, it's a school night. Yeah. I can't do the midweek one. And my prediction was 2-1 to them. I just always think we will score at home. So 2-1 to them.
And don't forget to do your fantasy team today. I think the deadline's tonight or something.
Yeah, I've done it already.
Yeah, good point. All right, guys. And then I think the final thing to say for the 100 of you that are still listening is stay positive. change is just around the corner, and it can. When you have lows, you can only get higher. So
it's the hope that kills you.
It's the hope that kills us. And was it just me, by the way, as a final funny point? When we scored that one goal, I thought, another goal, we can get back into this. One more goal.
Just you, mate. Just you.
Yeah, just like I thought we could get a result at Newcastle.
So there's just a final comment there.
Wow, interesting comment. I mean,
I didn't even straighten mine because Zumba was only like an hour before I started. I didn't even straighten mine.
No, well, I don't think the comment was directed at you, Becky.
No, and at the time you lot were all at the top. That's why it says top row. You were all at the top, weren't you? So.
You don't need to answer that comment. So as I said, I've been on Irish Hotspur and on here a couple of weeks ago, and I've been accused of having a wig. So just to be clear, it's all natural.
It's all your natural hair. It's because you've been giving it that extra bit of volume recently. The back combing's working wonders for you.
And I'm inspired by you, Craig, because your hair is always immaculate.
It's not the best. It's not the best today. It needs a bit of work, but I'm inspired by Gibbo. Look at Gibbo's locks.
It's thinning a bit now, mate. But
yeah.
Here I put the time in.
You've got to realise that when I do this, I'm always getting out of bed to come and do things.
Yeah, that's Dave's. Dave's got that in it.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. All right, then, guys. Well, the last thing to say, thank you very much, everyone. Hope you have a good rest of the week. Let's see where we are come end of play Thursday night. And come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on.